Wow, what a crazy race. Andres from AA Sports filming this video on Monday, the day after watching the Daytona 500. What a crazy race with a lot of highs and lows. You had rain, you had crashes, you had upsets, even a flip, which definitely raises safety concerns, which NASCAR really needs to address. And in the end, you have a back-to-back winner. Yes, back-to-back Daytona 500 winner. Congratulations, William Byron. He is this year's Daytona 500 champion. He successfully defends his 2024 title and has won back-to-back 500s. He wasn't the fastest car. He wasn't up near the front for the most part. Only led like 10 laps of the race. But he put himself and his car in position to avoid the late race trouble and mayhem, and that ended up being the winning moves for Byron. He now joins just a handful of elite drivers and can say he has multiple Daytona 500 wins. Sterling Marlin, Hamlin, Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Dale Jr., Michael Waltrip, William Byron with this second Daytona 500 win has joined a very small but special group of drivers within NASCAR's history. In this video, I'm going to talk about the good, the bad, the highs and the lows. I'm going to bounce it out, starting off with a high to congratulate him. Congrats, William Byron. A great race for him. Nice to see that 24 with the Exalta paint scheme that reminds me of 2007 Jeff Gordon. Just a really nice paint scheme on the car. Nice to see that car in victory lane and get the love it deserves. It's a really good looking car. So yeah, starting off with the high to congratulate William Byron. Congrats to him. Two-time Daytona 500 winner. Way to start the season for Byron. Now let's move on with a low. I'll balance it out with a high and low point as I break down the race. While Byron's win was a high, the low was the weather in Daytona. So for those, the word was already out. NASCAR moved the start time of the race an hour earlier than originally planned, specifically to avoid the rain, only for the race to be halted after 10 laps because of the rain. Once again, like clockwork, wherever NASCAR goes, it seems as if the rain clouds follow along as well. They were able to get the race in, the full race. It wasn't cut short or anything. They fortunately didn't have to postpone it to the next day. But yeah, a weather delay after 10 laps, after doing everything possible to avoid the rain, is not a good preview in terms of NASCAR finally avoiding the bad weather during race weekends. So not ideal. Moving on to a high point. The second high point I want to note, another positive of this race, especially if you're an OG Jimmy Johnson fan, was that he ended up finishing third place in this year's Great American Race. Jimmy Johnson, since partially retiring and only running select races on a part-time schedule, really hasn't been the same in that 84 car. Honestly, many of those races that he's ran on that limited schedule saw him in the back of the field and not getting good results at all. So to see him finish third was definitely a good break to see the seven-time champion have. And it definitely gives you feelings of back when Johnson was running full-time in the 48 and being a top contender week in and week out. Moving on into a low point, with 15 laps to go, Joey Logano and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Made contact. Logano tried to lift, but with nowhere to go, with the pack behind him, he gets Logano and Stenhouse. They make contact. Logano, he gets turned, and it causes a big crash involving 10 cars. And what's criminal about this was how Stenhouse was able to continue after being at fault for the crash. Like, that was just criminal. Logano was, by a mile, the best driver in this race with the fastest and best handling car. We saw him get to the lead and win stage one. Then he had an engine and grill issue after running over some sort of plastic bag debris. The team had to do a lot of work on the car in the pit lane. But despite that, he was able to drive back up into contention. And there was definitely a feeling among those watching that if he got back to the lead, Logano would most likely win just because the car was handling that well. However, with 15 laps to go, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. looked like Ricky Spinhouse Jr. Attempts a late block on a clearly faster Logano. Logano lifts and gets out of the gas. You see the flames come out of the exhaust pipes in the process, but Stenhouse still makes contact with Logano. It causes a chain reaction crash that Stenhouse gets away with, and Logano and Blaney end up wrecked, with Logano unable to continue, which was definitely an upset that was disappointing to see, given that 100% the Penske Fords were the best cars all race. If you did not see Logano as the best driver and car in the race, in terms of handling and performance, then it was definitely either Ryan Blaney or Austin Cindric. One of the three. The Penske cars were just phenomenal in this race, and they led the most laps in this year's Daytona 500. Kyle Busch, who unfortunately was also taken out in the crash, ended up blaming Logano for the wreck in the interviews following the crash. Honestly, this is a very not surprising thing from Kyle Busch, given past history with Joey Logano and the then Joe Gibbs drivers. There was a lot of reasons why, as Logano said, things just did not work out at Joe Gibbs. One of them being personality conflicts, and Kyle Busch is definitely one of the guys where you could see having personality conflicts with. He's been one of the bad guys in NASCAR in the past, and they've had they've had their confrontations and beefs in the past. And fans on social media as well. Fans on social media were quick to blame Joey Logano. I mean, frankly, it's mostly out of bias and tribalism. Some fans just, NASCAR fans, they have their driver that they absolutely love and live and ride and, crash and die by. Just are 100% loyal to. And then there's the drivers that they just absolutely cannot stand no matter what. And they will, just out of their bias, will cheer for them when they wreck, cheer for them when they do bad, cheer when they wreck, cheer when they do bad, XYZ, and then blame them for things just because they choose to out of their biases against a certain driver. And that's definitely, I think, what happened here with Joey Logano. I mean, frankly, again, it's mostly out of bias and tribalism. And the fact that fans didn't like that Logano won the series championship last year based on the given format. He won it under the given format, but a lot of people felt it wasn't very meritocratic. But let's be real. And this is not coming... I do have the Logano shirt behind me. I am a big Logano and Suarez fan. But fans need to get their bias out of the way on this kind of shit. I hate the bias no matter what, which driver you're rooting for. It could be Busch, Hamlin, Ryan Preece, Brad Keselowski, Logano, Suarez, whoever. Let's be real. That wreck, if we get bias out of the way, was very clearly on Stenhouse, who made a late block. Logano was clearly trying to lift. You could see it on the replays on the broadcast. But at the same time, he also had Noah Gragson behind him. And it's, you can only lift so much in such a tight pack. Stenhouse, his block caused a big one, and he turned into Ricky Spinhouse Jr. I will say Stenhouse's spotter was also at as much fault as Stenhouse for that crash. And it was crazy how he tried to deflect the blame. And honestly, if I were Hayek Motorsports, if I were, the team owner, the team general manager, or whatever, if I were a NASCAR journalist, I would write how Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s spotter should be fired on the spot after this race. I would fire him if I were Hayek Motorsports. And yeah, again, if I were a sports journalist for NASCAR, I would write about how Stenhouse's spotter should be fired after this Daytona 500 because of that crash. Stenhouse's spotter deflected blame on Logano for the crash, saying, it was on the broadcast, they played the clip, he's saying, like, guess the 22 decided to try and wreck you, when Logano on the replays again was visibly trying to lift before contact was made, as Stenhouse forced that, what he called block on Logano. Sounds like the spotter believed, and there were clips of this, being released, with the radioactive XYZ and stuff. It sounded like the spotter believed Stenhouse was clear when he clearly wasn't. And it led to Ricky making a bad move that could have been way worse for him. He did end up driving away with damage, but was still able to continue. But it could have been way worse for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And to make such a bad call on the radio to Stenhouse as the spotter in that scenario, saying like, he's clear, block that lane, go down low, and Stenhouse looking indecisive in the car while being on the high side of the track. Like, honestly, fire Stenhouse's spotter on the spot. Like, it's stupid. Stenhouse is at fault in that you don't make that block if you're Stenhouse. But as the spotter, you definitely do not tell your driver to block if you're him. You don't put the field or your driver in danger like that, especially given how crashes in these cars are much more dangerous today. The fact that the spotter did not take accountability for that, he beforehand was like, go low, stop the 22, and then did not take any accountability and deflected it. Fire that guy. You don't put the field and specifically you don't put your driver in danger like that, especially given your job as the spotter is to be the eyes in the sky for the driver to make sure he doesn't make a dangerous move. It was a big no-no by the spotter. Should be sacked. And again, it's especially more dangerous now, given how crashes in these cars are more dangerous, especially at super speedways and larger oval tracks like Michigan and Indianapolis, which leads to another low, and one highlight from the race I might as well discuss now, because this will definitely be talked about by NASCAR. It's already being talked about by fans. It's something that you imagine the racing and development teams who study the cars and the aerodynamics and engineering behind it will be discussing. And that is the crash with 5 laps to go. Christopher Bell gets turned in front of the pack. He collects Ryan Preece, who was trying to avoid him. Preece hits Bell. He gets up in the air. The car does a wheelie and then it backflips and tumbles in turn 3. Fortunately, Preece walked out okay from that ugly flip, but another scary crash at Daytona for him. And remember, he's already had one very ugly crash, and that was in 2023. And this was a comment from him that following being checked and released from the infield care center, that I want to read because I do think it's worth noting and talking about. Ryan Preece said, "We know where there's a problem at super speedways. I don't want to be the example of when it finally gets someone. I don't want it to be me. Something has to be done because cars lifting off the ground like that felt worse than Daytona in 2023, referring to his first flip at this track. And honestly, I get it. I totally understand where Ryan Preece is coming from right here. I have never seen a car flip like that, and frankly, it shouldn't. It gave me IndyCar blowover vibes. And I think his statement regarding something in the cars needing to be done, I think that's the closest thing to him inferring, to him saying there needs that NASCAR, they need to address the smooth, sleek underbody of the car. Obviously, entering the Daytona race last year, the Daytona race in the fall last year after Corey LaJoie flipped at Michigan in a blowover style wreck. They tried the shark fin on like the rear window at Daytona in the fall, and Josh Berry still blew over. And yeah, you can't reduce the speed, as it will ruin the life and blood of racing and the idea of cars being fast, especially on a track like Daytona. But, something has to be done, because at super speedways and even some of the longer ovals like Michigan, these cars are becoming the car of tomorrow 2.0. There is just flips everywhere. And I got to think that they got to address the underbody. I think the sleek underbody is playing a big factor in this, because, the trucks had a lot of crashes and spins. The Xfinity Series race also had its fair share of crashes and spins, but they don't have they didn't have flips in their races. And what's different from their cars and trucks compared to the Cup cars? They don't have that smooth, sleek underbody and under wing, whatever it's called, to go along with it. So I think NASCAR really does need to address the underbody of the car, because I do think that is playing a big role. Honestly, I would say they need to get rid of it. Because Priest is right. NASCAR's playing with fire, in my opinion. And, you can have blowover after blowover, and, a driver can walk out okay, but eventually it's only a matter of time before one driver is not able to get out of the car on his own and needs the help of the AMR safety team, or worse. And, we're going to be having a very different, very darker conversation. So this is becoming a safety concern. As cool as the flips are to see, and as cool as they are to see on TV, and the photography and the replays on, Fox and NBC Sport and NBC, yeah, it's dangerous for the drivers, and it's not worth it. It's not worth keeping the car the way it is right now if it's putting drivers' safety at risk. You know what I mean? And man, in terms of Ryan Preece, I honestly feel bad for him. I'm starting to feel bad for him. He's the current Cup car is like the car of tomorrow 2.0, in that there's a shit ton of blowovers. But Ryan Preece has become Ryan Newman 2.0. If he doesn't have bad luck at super speedways, he has zero luck at super speedways. And I swear, he's just been a crash test dummy in a way for these Cup cars. What was it, during the pandemic at Kansas? He had a hard hit in the inside wall. Then I think, 2022, or I think it was also 2023, either one of those 2 years. At Talladega, he had that absolutely brutal T-bone crash with Kyle Larson that exposed a safety flaw in terms of the cars taking an impact from the side in a T-bone style crash. That wasn't good. Then you had his horrid flip in the fall of 2023 at Daytona, where obviously the roof hatch popped right open almost instantly. Just a brutal tumble. That raised safety concerns regarding the roof. Then they tried to remove the grass, thinking the grass was the problem. Clearly it wasn't, because LaJoie flipped on pavement in the back. He blew over on pavement at Michigan. Then they tried the shark fin. That didn't work. So yeah, hopefully this is just one bad race, and Ryan Preece has a much better season in that 60 car for RFK Racing. Hopefully he is very, very competitive, and hopefully NASCAR does address this issue, specifically with the underbody, as it appears that is the reason why these cars are blowing over a lot. Moving on to a high note. Let's get to a high note. Justin Allgaier. How about Justin Allgaier? He gets a top 10 finish, finishing 9th place for the Junior Motorsport entry, which is a great Cup debut for the Junior Motorsports team. As of now, this is a one-off race, but Dale Jr. did state afterwards that he would like to field a Cup Series car in the future for more races or even full-time. He also commented that it will take big funding and sponsorship that the team is still short on compared to the more established teams like your Joe Gibbs Racing, like your Hendrick Motorsports, and Penske. But honestly, I would love to see Junior Motorsports go Cup racing full time for whether it's 2-car entry, 3 cars like Penske, or even just single car like right now. I think it would be awesome to see Junior Motorsports make the jump to the Cup Series. And I think, based on what we saw at Daytona, Justin Allgaier would be a great fit for that car, a great fit in that Junior Motorsports system. I hope in these coming couple of years, whether it's for another race this year or next year, that they can make that happen. But congrats to Junior Motorsports in their first ever Cup Series race. They get a top 10 finish. And it was a nice result for Justin Allgaier, who this is his first race in the Cup Series in a while. So good to see both the driver and the team succeed there. Then moving on to another low point. Unfortunately, the international drivers did not do well in this race. Daniel Suarez from Monterrey, Mexico, was doing okay avoiding trouble for the most part, but was caught in that crash where Priest flipped with 5 laps to go. He was somewhat able to save his race, finishing 13th, but given he was near the top 5 prior to that crash and then ended up getting damage in the crash, a bit of a disappointing one there. SVG, Shane Van Gisbergen, I don't think really even had a chance. His race appeared to be over before it really even started. I believe he was having mechanical issues in the car throughout and the race, and didn't even finish top 20. He finished the race, but was several laps down, nowhere near contention. Definitely sucks for SVG. Just not a good showing at Daytona, but hopefully this is just a bad hiccup, a bad race for the team. Just a weird scenario in terms of the car handling and its condition, and hopefully we see him be much more competitive like we've seen him in the Xfinity Series. I do think Shane Van Gisbergen can be a good driver this year and put up some good results. Hopefully we see that, and that this will not be a preview for worse, as I really do like Shane Van Gisbergen and his driving. And then Helio Castroneves, the IndyCar champion, the international driver who was given that 41st place provisional representing Brazil. He gets caught up in a crash that was not his fault. And man, this was arguably the worst speed weeks a NASCAR driver could have in regards to Helio Castroneves. Single car qualifying, just falls short of directly qualifying on speed. Didn't really matter because he had that 41st place provisional anyways. And then in the duels, he gets caught up in a wreck that wasn't his fault. He raced he did double duty this weekend. He competed in the ARCA race and gets crashed on not even the final lap. It was after the checkered flag, literally the most ARCA thing ever. I guess you could, I'll count that as a ARCA breaks moment. They crashed after the checkered flag, which is absolutely crazy. And that one he wasn't at fault for either. And then to crash in the Daytona 500 again, not his fault either. No luck for Helio Castroneves. But hopefully this isn't the only opportunity. Hopefully this isn't a one-off opportunity for him. Hopefully he gets another chance, specifically at a road course or at like the Chicago street course. I think he could be a big X factor in those races, as that is definitely more in his wheelhouse. But yeah, disappointing Daytona speed weeks this year for Helio Castroneves and the driver from Brazil. Moving into a high point, Chase Briscoe, who moved to the number 19 for Joe Gibbs Racing this year. He gets a top 5 finish in the race, finishing 4th. And John Hunter Nemechek for the Legacy Motor Club, driving the number 42. He finished 5th. A great result for both of these drivers. John Hunter Nemechek finally getting a top 10 result. They've been really wanting to look for that. Finally get it at Daytona to start the year. Chase Briscoe, who had a little bit of uncertainty in the offseason following Stewart-Haas Racing shutting down. He gets he gets a top 5 finish in his first race for Joe Gibbs Racing. So nice to see a good start for Chase Briscoe as well. So those are the highs and lows, but I also want to finish, before I end the video, I do want to finish with an interesting takeaway. And I heard some people, I think David Land and Eric Estep on social media, the guys from Out of the Groove, had said this, but they felt that the ending for the Daytona 500 really was more of a lottery, more of like just who had good luck and just survived the crazy chaos of the final laps, because there was also a final lap crash. And that the winner, William Byron, was not truly the best driver and best car. And I honestly, I kind of have to agree with that, because was William Byron the best car? The answer was no. Was he the best driver in the race? No. He only led 10 laps. In my opinion, the guy who was most deserving to win the race was, whether fans like it or not, out of their bias, or whoever they root for, was that 22 of Joey Logano. He had the best car. It was a very fast car. He led a lot of laps. But unfortunately got caught up in the mayhem of just final laps of Daytona, and a dumb block by Recky Spinhouse. And if it wasn't Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, who got caught up in a wreck, Austin Cindric, even Denny Hamlin, those were the other 3 cars and the other 3 drivers that were really, really good in this race, that I felt were definitely deserved it more than William Byron. They were leading. They were at the front of the pack, leading laps, showing how good their cars were handling, how good drivers they were at the super speedways. William Byron essentially kind of stole this win. I mean, he was not leading on the final lap. Custer, Hamlin, Cindric. Hamlin and Cindric were the 2 leaders. They were side by side on the final lap. But Custer, he gets turned. He collects Hamlin and Cindric and a bunch of other cars. A final lap, big one. William Byron on the high lane. The oceans essentially parted for him. It was pure good luck. And that's where you do question these restrictor plate races, because it definitely felt like the best driver and car didn't really win. And that's where I think Eric Estep, the Out of the Groove channel, had an interesting take on it, where it was like, maybe you can adjust the pack racing to be where it was like early 2000s, where the better car, there was still pack racing, but the better cars were still visible, and rightfully so, up front in contending for the race at the end. Very interesting take. I do think in a scenario like that, if NASCAR did roll back the pack racing like that, I think Logano would have 100% been the winner of this race, because again, it was just, he had the best car up until that crash. And if it wasn't him, another Penske car I think would have won it, because the Penske Fords led the most laps in the race. Very interesting take, but let me know in the comments what you think about that. I would love to hear your takes on that. Overall, though, if I had to give a grade for the race, I would say B grade. It wasn't terrible. I do think it was a little disappointing, given that the winner kind of it wasn't clearly the best car, but nevertheless, it was still entertaining. The Daytona 500, you gotta love it. William Byron definitely pulled off an upset win, in my opinion, with the way he won it. And, props to NASCAR on that final lap as they were crashing on the backstretch and entering turn 3. NASCAR, they did not throw the caution on the last lap. They did not call the race right there. They let them race back, even though 5 or 6 cars barely survived that wreck, with Byron leading them. NASCAR did not throw the yellow. They didn't call the race. They let him race back. So props to NASCAR there. They didn't want to do what happened in the dual races, where they threw the caution right before the start finish line, and it essentially altered the outcome of the duels. They walked it back in the Daytona 500. They let him race back. Always nice to see the cars let him race it out on the final lap. So props to NASCAR there. But overall, a B grade race. It wasn't the best Daytona 500 ever, but it also wasn't the worst Daytona 500 ever by any means. Obviously, you had some things that definitely were definitely brought the hype down. The rain delay, obviously, the flip was definitely something that raises concerns. Some of the wrecks and the fact that not the best car didn't necessarily win the race, but nevertheless, it was still entertaining. It was still fun. I love the super speedway racing. They should not get rid of it by any means. And I cannot wait for next week, where they will go to another super speedway track, Atlanta, which is essentially baby Daytona. So can't wait for more pack racing next week. Andres from AA Sports. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below of the highs and lows that I pointed out in this video. And let me know some other things that were also worth noting in the comments. But yeah, definitely a great race. Can't wait for the rest of the NASCAR season. That's all for me in this video. Leave a like and subscribe to help support this sports passion project. Stay tuned for more of my sports content, whether it's NASCAR, 49ers, Giants, Mexico national team, or the San Jose Sharks. You name it. Leave a like and subscribe. Stay tuned for my sports videos and content. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening, and I'll see you all in the next one.